आपकी इजाजत से। तो ख्वातीन और हज़रात, जो मैं कहने जा रहा हूं, हालांकि ये शेर की जबान में है, लेकिन ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ सच है। आज की रात उजाले मेरे हमसाया है। तो आप देख सकते हैं उन उजालों को। आज की रात उजाले मेरे हमसाया हैं, आज की रात जो जी लूं तो नया हो जाऊं, और तीशे वक्त बताए कि तारुफ के लिए ये जो जिम्मेदारी मुझे दी गई है, तीशे वक्त बताए कि तारुफ के लिए किन पहाड़ों की बुलंदी पे खड़ा हो जाऊं। तो खातिन हजरात, मरहला यही दरपेश है कि समझ नहीं आता कि तारुफ के लिए किन पहाड़ों की बुलंदी पर खड़ा हुआ जाए। लेकिन तारुफी कलमात की ये जो जिम्मेदारी आज इस हकीर फकीर को दी गई है, ये एक खालिस आजमाइश है। और आजमाइश यूं है कि अगर फना निजामी, जो कि किसी जमाने में हमारे पड़ोसी हुआ करते थे, तो उनका मशवरा माना जाए तो हमें आज सुकूत करना चाहिए था, कतई चुप रहना चाहिए था। लेकिन साहब, अगर सुकूत इख्तियार करते तो आपको फना निजामी का लाफानी शेर कैसे सुना पाते। फना निजामी साहब ने शायद ऐसी ही किसी महफिल के लिए लिखा था जिसमें अशोक वाजपेयी साहब को शिरकत करना थी, और वो शेर कुछ यूं था कि सब होंगे उससे अपने तारुफ की फिक्र में, सब होंगे उससे अपने तारुफ की फिक्र में, मुझको मेरे सुकूत से पहचाना जाएगा। तो गलबन ये राज फाश हो ही गया होगा कि ये फरीज तारुफ ममदूह के शायान शान हरगिज नहीं है, क्योंकि ऐसा भला कौन होगा जो ये ना जानता होगा कि अशोक वाजपेयी हमारे मुल्क अजीज के मशहूर शायर, मारूफ मुसन्निफ, जाने माने नक्काद, बेहतरीन मजमून निगार और मुतरज्जिम होने के साथ साथ एक फलसफियाना विचारक होने के अलावा और भी बहुत कुछ है। अभी उनके तारुफ में रजी भाई ने आपको बहुत सी बातें बताई, तो मैं चाहूंगा कि उनका हवाला अब न दूं, और अगर शायराना जबान का और इस्तेमाल किया जाए, इस्तारों और इशारों कनायों का इस्तेमाल किया जाए, जो कि इस दौर इब्तिला में लाजमी भी है और एक तरह की हिफाजती तदबीर भी, तो हम कहेंगे कि अशोक वाजपेयी के मकाम और काम को समझने समझाने के लिए दो शहंशाहों की जरूरत है। पहले शहंशाह अशोक और दूसरे शहंशाह शाहजहां। इनका हवाला हम दे सकते हैं। तो जिस तरह अशोक ने बड़े बड़े सुतून तामीर करवाए जो अशोक की लाट कहलाते हैं, ताकि उनका पैगाम आवाम तक पहुंचाया जाए, इसी तरह उनके हम नाम अशोक वाजपेयी ने भी अपने खूने जिगर से 38-40 स्तंभ किताबों और शेरी मजमुओं के तौर पर तहरीर फरमाए कि फिक्रो यगानियत का पैगाम उनका आवाम तक पहुंच सके। और जिस तरह शाहजहां अपनी खूबसूरत इमारतों अपने बेटे दारा शिकोह के लिए कम अज कम अगले साल तक 2024 तक जरूर याद किए जाएंगे, इसी तरह हिंदुस्तानी अदब और सकाफत से मुताल्लिक इदारों की खूबसूरत तामीरात के लिए अशोक वाजपेयी को भी, मुझे लगता है, बहुत दिनों तक याद किया जाएगा। अब ये जो ड्यूरेशन है, ये बताना बहुत मुश्किल है, क्योंकि हालात काफी दिगरगू हैं। क्योंकि हिंदुस्तान भर में तकरीबन 1 दर्जन के आसपास इदारों की तामीर, और अगर तामीर नहीं तो तौसी का सेहरा आपके सर पर है। बहुत सारी किताबों के साथ साथ अशोक वाजपेयी साहब 8 जर्नल्स, यानी कि 8 रिसालों या जरायद के बानी एडिटर भी हैं। आपकी शायरी का सभी हिंदुस्तानी जबानों के साथ साथ फ्रांसीसी, अस्पानवी, जर्मन, पोलिश, रूसी, हंगेरियन, नॉर्वेजियन और अरबी फारसी वगैरह में तर्जुमा किया गया है। अपनी किताब कहीं नहीं वहीं के लिए आपको साहित्य अकादमी अवार्ड दिया गया था, और उसके बाद आपको बहुत से अवार्ड मिले जो कि गैर बैनुल अक़वामी नौइयत के हैं, जैसे कि पोलैंड की जानिब से ऑफिसर्स क्रॉस ऑफ मेरिट, और फ्रांस का जो आला तरीन अदबी इनाम है वो भी आपको दिया गया। लेकिन जो आज का मौजू है, अगर हम उस पे आए तो आपकी शायरी का हवाला दिया जाना बहुत ज़रूरी है। और मुझे इस बात को तस्लीम कर लेना चाहिए कि अशोक वाजपेयी साहब की जो शायरी है, उसकी साफ साफ तारीफ और तशरीह कम अज कम मेरे लिए काफ़ी मुश्किल है। आप सभी जानते हैं कि हम सब दुआ करते हैं, और आजकल तो दुआ का वक्त चल रहा है, दुआ की बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत है। और कई बार ऐसा होता है जब आपकी दुआ नहीं सुनी जाती तो आप चीख कर कुछ कहना चाहते लेकिन चीख नहीं पाते। तो ये दोनों चीजों पे ध्यान देने की जरूरत है, दुआ और चीख। तो दुआ और चीख के दरमियान जो जो रद्दोबदल और तरमीम होती है या जो कुछ मुलतवी हो जाता है, अशोक वाजपेयी की शायरी अगर उन्हीं के अल्फाज में इस्तेमाल करूं तो प्रार्थना और चीख के बीच स्थगित कविता है। यानी कि जो जो दुआ और चीख के बीच में मुलतवी हो जाता है। अपनी एक नज्म में वो लिखते हैं, और शायद उनका आज का मौजू भी इसी मुझसे मुताल्लिक होने वाला है। वो कहते हैं, अब हम ऐसे समय में आ गए हैं कि झूठ को सच की तरह देख सकते हैं। सच सच अब हमारे भरोसे या सहारे नहीं है, और हम राहत महसूस करते हैं कि हमें उसके लिए परेशान नहीं होना पड़ता। हमें अब किसी अदालत में हलफ नहीं उठाना है, क्योंकि अदालत ने जैसी तैसी गवाही पर यकीन कर हमें हमें दोषी नहीं पाया। हमने हमने नरसंहार दूर से देखा, हमने कत्लेआम दूर से देखा, पर हमारे साफ धुले कपड़ों पर खून का एक भी दाग नहीं है। जब वो सब हुआ तो मौके पर हम मौजूद नहीं थे, और हमारा हमारा ना होना साबित है। तो अपने अपने होने को साबित करने की अब हमें दरकार नहीं। अब हम ऐसे समय में आ गए हैं। किसी फलसफी की तरह आपकी तहरीरों में हमको गहरी गहरी तमद्दुनी सोच, यानी कि जो इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन है, उसको पूरे पे अगर हम नजर डालें तो अक्सर ऐसा लगता है कि वो पूरी की पूरी आपकी नजर में रहती है। या फिर अगर हम यूनिवर्स की बात करें तो गहरी कायनाती सोच का अक्स हमको आपकी तहरीरों में देखने को मिलता है। और एक और बात, मैं उनकी कुछ किताबें देख रहा था कल, कुछ नज़में देख रहा था, तो खासतौर से मौत के कई नजरिए हमको मिलते हैं और जो बड़े अच्छे हैं, दिलचस्प हैं। अशोक वाजपेयी साहब कहते हैं कि अपनी एक नज्म में, अपनी तहरीरों में, कि मौत सूरज की तरह आ सकती है। जैसे सूरज के आते ही रोशनी आ जाती, सब कुछ दिखने लगता है। मौत सूरज की तरह आ सकती है और कभी हमें बच्चे की तरह लेकर जा सकती है सुबह की सैर के लिए। या फिर मौत हमें दोबारा उस घर पहुंचा सकती है जहां कभी हमारी माँ थी। यानी मौत माँ से मिलाप की मानिंद हो सकती है या होती है। या फिर मौत हो सकता है बाप के साथ उंगली थामे हमेशा की तरह खामोश अपना गला साफ करते हुए हमें कहीं ले जाए। मौत हो सकती है एक नई शक्ल और शबीह का नाकाबिले तस्खीर कार्मिक हुसूल। या मौत का मतलब इस्तीफा हो सकता है, जहां हम नहीं चाहते जिंदगी गुजारना। तो चुनांचे जिंदगी और मौत के दरमियान मौजूद ये जो बेज़ाब्तियां हैं, देखिए, जिंदगी में बहुत कुछ जाब्ते के तहत होता है, लेकिन बहुत कुछ अनसर्टेनिटीज के साथ होता है, जिसे हम कहते हैं बहुत बेज़ाब्तगी के साथ होता है। तो ये जो जिंदगी और मौत के दरमियान बहुत सी अनसर्टेनिटीज हैं, बहुत सी बेज़ाब्तियां हैं, अशोक वाजपेयी की शायरी उन्हीं में अपना घर बनाती है, बसाती है और शायद उजाड़ती भी है। मजीद समाखराशी से परहेज करते हुए मैं आपके और अशोक वाजपेयी साहब के दरमियान और ज्यादा हायल नहीं होना चाहता। तो ओवर टू अशोक वाजपेयी साहब, बहुत इज्जत और एहतराम के साथ।
जी अशोक साहब, प्लीज।
जी,
Yeah, it's your time. Yeah, please.
हाँ,
जी जी
आवाज आ रही मेरी?
जी जी बिल्कुल आ रही।
हाँ।
बस आपको सुनने को तैयार हम लोग।
हाँ, जी, शायरी की जबान में इरशाद इरशाद फरमाए। जी
क्या हुआ वाजपेयी साहब?
जी 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 हम लोग मुंतजिर हैं। जी
कोई दानिश कोई इशू उनको पूछें।
उन तक हमारी आवाज पहुंच रही है क्या?
हाँ बिल्कुल पहुंच रही।
जी जी अशोक वाजपेयी साहब, हम लोगों की आवाज आप
जी
तक आ रही है?
हाँ आ रही है जी।
जी 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 बस आप शुरू कीजिए ये गुफ्तगू। जी
अच्छा शुक्रिया।
जी जी जी
अ, नमस्कार। अ, मुझे ये अंदाज नहीं था कि अगर मैं हिंदी में बोलूं तो भी चलेगा। मैंने तैयारी अंग्रेजी में की। तो बहरहाल अ,
आप दोनों में मिलके बोलिए, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं, जैसे आप फील करें
हाँ
कंफर्टेबल।
ठीक है।
जी जी
So,
सारी जबानें आपकी हैं।
I speak to you as a Hindi poet critic, an art lover, and a concerned citizen of India. My theme is hard times upon us. So I must speak both on hard times and also upon us. What do I mean by us? But before I start, uh, let me remind you that today is Jawaharlal Nehru's death anniversary. And that in a certain sense, the human condition is always located in twilight, between light and shadows. But the shadows that I speak to you about, under which I work now, some of them at the moment are that a new parliament building is being inaugurated tomorrow, not by the President of India, who is an essential component, according to the Constitution of India, of the parliament. And in the face of absence of 20 opposition parties. Secondly, a group of internationally award-winning women athletes have been on a protest for several days on grounds of sexual misconduct by a politician who happens to be chairman of the institution to which they belong. In the northeastern state of Manipur, there has been communal violence which doesn't seem to subside. A group of contemporary artists have organized an exhibition in National Gallery of Modern Art, inspired by a politician's series of addresses to the people called Man Ki Baat. These are the shadows which presently I speak to you under. I start with a couplet of Ghalib, है परतबे खुर्शीदे जहां ताब इधर थी, साये की तरह हम पे अजब वक्त पड़ा है. My friend Najib Jung translated it into English. O reflection of the sun that lights up the world, look at us too. Like a shadow, strange times have befallen us. So I start with who are us? Surely we are not the people of India, as the preamble of the Constitution states, because nearly 38% of the voting population has voted this regime into power. So, us are those Indians who have lived largely in a democratic polity and ethos for more than 6 decades, with some interruptions, namely during emergency, 1.5 years. Secondly, we are the Indians who have experienced, enjoyed, contributed to Indian culture marked by pluralities of ways of life, faith in gods, languages, customs, cuisines, costumes, etc. Our culture has been marked by openness to the world, accommodation of new ideas, a strong, well-entrenched tradition of questioning, dissent, debate, dialogue. After all, Vedas and Upanishads, even if you take them to be the founding text, and the two great epics, full of dissent, full of questions. They are in Upanishads, all the Upanishads are question answer mode. The Ramayana has Kushal Prashnas, and you have Mahabharata Yaksha Prashnas. So there is a well-entrenched tradition, and I have edited a book of 3,000 years of dissent, debate, and dialogue called India Dissents. Then we are also those Indians who felt inspired by the values of freedom, equality, justice, fraternity, and tried to sustain them in personal life, in creative endeavor, in social conduct. We are those who realize that 8, 9 religions of India, 4 invented in India, the rest coming from elsewhere, all of them manifested the spiritual needs, urges, aspirations of the Indian people and have contributed significantly to India's culture, its metaphysical richness and complexity, its arts, literature, performing traditions, sculpture and architecture, its unique wisdom of plurality and creativity, its basket of humanizing values and concepts. We are the Indians who believe that its various languages and dialects, nearly more than 700 according to the People's Linguistic Survey of India conducted by my friend Ganesh Devi, have been inexhaustible sources of memory, creativity, imagination, inhering in the utterly local, unmistakable universe. We are also those Indians who realize that while in democracy, universal franchise makes every individual a political being exercising political choices, politics and religions, two major social forces, must remain separate from each other without poaching on each other's territory. We as Indians believe that truth is and cannot be. Truth is not and cannot be anybody's exclusive acquisition or property. It is always shared and plural in its nature and manifestations. We are also heirs of the great articulation of nonviolence during our freedom struggle as an effective and human way of winning over social evils, political adversity, economic inequalities. We won our independence from the colonial powers largely and substantially through nonviolence. We think Indian modernity is a shared heritage of classical Sanskrit corpus, bhakti poetry, Sufism, our encounter with the West, etc. We do not see India only as a nation state, but also as a distinct civilizational enterprise. It extends beyond the nation state boundaries. Now, these are us. Now, I'm a Hindi writer, and I belong to a small minority of the creative and reflective community. Now, what are the hard times that have befallen us? Firstly, violence, killing, lynching, bulldozing encounters are the dominant tendencies in India. Secondly, they have become almost legitimate expressions of social action. In the current regime in Uttar Pradesh, a person gets killed every day. And every 15 days, one person is killed in police encounters. And more than 5,000 people have been injured by police firing. Many, if not all, constitutional institutions of vigilance, restraint, protection, relief, etc., are failing to perform. These include election commission, courts, administration, civil service, human rights commissions, etc. They are no longer trustworthy. They are increasingly acting in a in many partisan ways. A great disaster is the moral collapse of the media, both print and electronic. A large part of media, its most influential part, economically well endowed, sections have become Godi media, propaganda machines for the regime. Its mouth speaks, failing to question the ruling party and the regime, but questioning the opposition all the time, reducing, making all debates quarrelsome, uncivilized, abusive. The places, sites, occasions for dissent, debate, discussion, dialogue, etc., like the media, The educational institutions, universities, etc., are being decimated, devalued, interrupted. Dissent has been almost criminalized. An ethos has been promoted aggressively in which religious minorities, especially Muslims and Christians, are being made invisible in politics, electoral processes, social arena, governance, etc., by marginalizing, devaluing, humiliating them. A political ideology called Hindutva has been on the rise, which has incidentally very little to do with Hindu religious thought, Hindu metaphysics and spirituality, foundational texts such as the Vedas, Upanishads, the Shat Darshanas, the two great epics, including the mission, including the wisdom delineated in them. Hindutva is based on hatred for and intolerance of other religions, especially Islam and Christianity. It harks back to the so-called Muslim period, nurtures its hatred, its past atrocities committed by Muslim rulers, tries to denigrate and deny contribution of the Mughals. Significantly, it does not critique the British colonialism, since it is itself a product of the colonial design of creating a divide between Hindus and Muslims. It plays down the freedom struggle, attempts to devalue Gandhi, Nehru, etc., since its own founders had very dubious and complicit role in the freedom struggle. It pays lip service to the constitutional values of freedom, equality, justice, fraternity, and openly acts towards violating them all the time. I should substantiate what is said above, and I quote from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. In Mahabharata, in Vanaparva, it said, O Mahipal, when one religion is opposed to another religion, consider thoughtfully which one is bigger, which smaller. That religion which does not oppose another religion should be followed. Again in one part, again is said, O king, a religion which opposes another religion is not a religion, but bad religion. The religion which does not oppose another religion is the truth. Now, how does the Hindutva fit into this scheme of things where hatred of other religions is almost the basic structure of this political ideology? Mahabharata further says, the true king is one who keeps his subjects free from any fear. And here we are living under constant fear, surveillance, some kind of a spying. We have become spies on each other. Which side is he on, my neighbor? In Ramayana, after Ram has established the Ram Rajya in Ayodhya, he addresses the citizens of Ayodhya and tells them, if I ever speak something unethical, you must, my brethren, interrupt me without fear. We have these several quote, quotation, sayings which have been quoted ad absurdum. Vasudhaiva kutumbaka, ekam sad vipraha bahudha vadan, eko ham bahutyam. They all point out towards a more democratic approach to spirituality, to metaphysics, to religious practices. True that there has always been a gap between the religious thought and religious practice. But this is true about all religions. But thought cannot be superseded to the extent that the practice itself becomes thought, because that would be a violation of the religious truth, if any. In India, largely through social media and mercenary trollers working 24 hours, lies, rumors, hatred spread so fast and so wide that truth and reality becoming inaccessible, almost a minority. Social media, which has become a very powerful media of resistance and protest, but at the same time, it has very unsocial aspects. It should not be, and they are being used by the ruling forces of India to the hilt. There's a conspiratorial effort to wipe out memory, encourage amnesia, impose concocted memory. Chunks of history are being dropped inexplicably from the textbooks. Knowledge, scholarship, individual rigor, etc., are being almost systematically undermined, sometimes ridiculed. Ignorance in India speaks from the top with great self-confidence. Never in our life we have witnessed that ignorance could be so glorified. Violence, lynching, murder, violent attacks, bulldozing, encounters have become almost legitimate modes of social expression, social action. And now I come to my own region, the Hindi Urdu belt in North India. 70% of national crimes or crimes against crimes relating to violence, murder, rape, women, children, minorities, Adivasis take place in the Hindi Urdu belt. 70%. In UP alone, as I said earlier, one person a day gets killed in police action, and one person every fortnight is disposed of in encounters. Come religious festivals, and they increasingly have become occasion for open, blatant attempts to disrupt social harmony. Attacks on individual privacy and dignity have become a kind of daily sport. A clear attempt at homogenization in the face of irrepressible and vital living plurality of India by imposing one God, one temple, one religion, one language. Democratic processes are being shamelessly used to subvert democracy. Electoral victories being turned into majoritarianism. Blatant use of legal processes undermine and sideline constitutional spirit and vision is being done. As I told you, the new parliament building should have been inaugurated by a tribal woman who's happily the president of India. She is being denied this, which is and which is not only not in keeping with the constitution, but is an affront to womanhood, to tribalhood in this country. All public culture has been reduced to spectacle. The National Academies, three of them for literature, visual arts, and performing arts, have become national fora of mediocrity and irrelevance. They do seminars on Swachh Bharat, on yoga, etc. They have become. Now, we remember during emergency, Indira Gandhi imposed a 20-point program. That 20-point program was never implemented or discussed by Sahitya Academy or paintings made by Lalit under the auspices of Lalit Kala Academy on 20-point program. There's such a degradation of public taste of arts. In Delhi, if you go around, you'll find in flyovers, in bypasses, in underpasses, horrendous public art, which is insult to modern Indian art and also an insult to genuine folk arts of India. Great damage being done to public discursive language, especially Hindi. And I feel very enraged by it. My mother tongue is being increasingly made to appear as a language of quarrel, abuses, making accusative. हिंदी सिर्फ झगड़े की, धौंस की, डरावनी भाषा बन जाए और तरह तरह के टुच्चे लोग हिंदी का उपयोग दूसरों पर कीचड़ उछालने, दूसरों पर लांछन लगाने, दूसरों पर आरोप लगाने के लिए करते। एक बहुत ही एक लेखक के लिए आप सोच सकते हैं कि ये कितनी कष्ट की बात है। मैंने शुरू किया था गालिब के एक शेर से और मैं खत्म करना चाहता हूं उसी गालिब के एक दूसरे शेर से। पहला शेर तो था परतबे खुर्शीदे जहां ताब इधर भी साये की तरह हम पे जब वक्त पड़ा। तो अब ये जो शेर है वो शेर है जौहरे तेग बसर चश्मे दीगर मालूम हूं मैं वो सब्जा कि जहराब उगाता है मुझे. So today, my dear friends, writers and artists who are still holding on to some of the values of this culture, this civilization, who are still courageous enough to resist the temptation of the state and the ruling polity, who are still wanting and endeavoring to uphold and explore plurality. They are like green plants being nourished by poisonous water. हम सब जहराब से उगे हुए सब्जे हैं. कितनी देर बने रहेंगे ये कहना मुश्किल है, पर कम से कम ये गनीमत है कि हम अभी भी हरे हैं, सब्जे हैं. और ठीक है कि हमारे घाव भी हरे, लेकिन हम पूरी हिम्मत से और कई बार हिमाकत की हद तक जाकर देख पा रहे हैं कि हमारे वक्त में क्या हो रहा है, और उसको पूरी हिम्मत से कह पा रहे हैं. हमें कोई ये यकीन नहीं है कि हमारी मुट्ठी में सच है, और हमको ये यकीन है कि हम झूठ नहीं बोल रहे. हमने झूठ की पाले में जाने से इनकार किया. मैंने अपनी एक कविता में बहुत साल पहले इसी रजीम के दौरान ये कहा था, ये समय कवि बने रहने का समय है, नायक बनने का समय, क्योंकि सारे नायक खलनायक हो चुके. तो दोस्तों, आपने मेरी बात सुनी. इसमें से बहुत सारी बातें ऐसी होंगी जो आपको पता है. मैंने कोई नई बात नहीं कही है, सिवाय इसके कि मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि इस समय जो भारत का संकट है वो सिर्फ राजनीति या लोकतंत्र का संकट नहीं है, ये सभ्यता का संकट. हमारी सभ्यता पर हमला, और ये सभ्यता जो इतने सारे सदियों से तरह तरह के हमले बर्दाश्त करते हुए आगे चलती आई है, हम अभी भी ये उम्मीद और यकीन करते हैं कि ये सभ्यता इन हमलों से भी उबर कर आगे वैसी ही बनी रहेगी, जैसी अपनी बहुलता में, अपने खुलेपन में, अपने साहस में, और असहमति और प्रश्नांकुलता में वो बनी रही.
What a wonderful and powerful presentation. It's inspiring. It's very challenging also. It's very depressing also, what we know already, but on what you told us. And so let's hear Dr. Professor Devi for the concluding remarks, and after that we will have a question and answer session. Professor Devi, please.
Namaskar. When a poet of Ashok Vajpeyi's standing is compelled to speak the way he spoke this morning for US, this evening for India, about his Samaj, Sabhyata, Vatan, Vyavastha, one cannot but feel pained, disturbed, unsettled, and one cannot but feel angry, agitated, and move to action. He began by mentioning that today, 27th, is the day to remember Jawaharlal Nehru. And then he also mentioned that tomorrow, India will see a new structure called Parliament being inaugurated in absence of the President of India, who's legitimately the person who should have inaugurated any new parliament. These two facts juxtaposed bring back to me the memory of the speech that Jawaharlal Nehru gave on the eve of independence. I think Ashok Vajpeyi's lecture today is as historically important, and every word of what he said is as grounded in the experience of the multitude of people in India as was Jawaharlal Nehru's lecture on the eve of independence. I hope this forum will show the foresight and courage to print his lecture, have it translated in as many languages as possible, and arrange for distributing it rather than just keeping it in cold record that the Zoom allows to do as of one more event. I hope the pain that his words brought does not get trivialized as one lecture in the series. A poet of his standing saying these words should be seen as an event of great magnitude in the long civilizational history of India. I will add to what he said while fully agreeing with him. In pain, I agree with him. In grief, I agree with him. In anger and anxiety, I agree with him. I would like to add that tomorrow is the day when the Parliament building will be inaugurated. It happens to be the birth anniversary of V.D. Savarkar. We are in the year 2023. Exactly 100 years ago, in 1923, Savarkar drafted a text called The Essentials of Hindutva, with 7 principles articulated. And what this regime is doing is exactly following those 7 principles. The most disturbing among those 7 principles was in complete contravention of the spirit of Hinduism and in complete disagreement with the entire history of Indian civilization. The principle was that if a person's Pitru Bhumi is the same as one's Punya Bhumi, then alone that person will be a loyal citizen. If somebody's Punya Bhumi is not within the Pitru Bhumi, not the geographical territorial limits of nation, then that person can be a dubious, a suspicious, a potentially disloyal citizen. This interpretation is being imposed, this interpretation of citizenship is being imposed on India in every possible way. in every mode of violence possible for the state, as well as the non-state actors who are supporting this regime, the RSS. That principle is being imposed. And Ashokji has so movingly presented that in a very few words, like a poet, presented that whole scenario. Now, I mentioned the year 1923. Let me also mention the year 1924. In 1924, Hitler's Mein Kampf was published. And Mein Kampf had the entire program that Hitler implemented after coming to power in 1933 for 12 years, destroying so many millions, destroying the peace of the world. The present implementation of Savarkar's completely misconstrued idea of Hindutva is the present regime is implementing that idea to every word, every letter, every sentence. And in doing so, it is causing immense harm to the Hindu way of life, which, as Ashokji illustrated by referring to epics and scriptures, and as also laid down legally by judgment of a Supreme Court, does not have a unitary Hindu way of life, does not have a unitary agenda, homogenizing agenda. It admits, respects diversity. It allows space for dialogue. The wrong agenda of Hindutva, as if it is what Hinduism is being implemented, is causing the greatest harm in the history of entire Indian civilization to the Hindu view of life and the Hindu way of life. The implementation of this agenda is causing mindless destruction, devastation to the idea of the Indian democracy and the Indian state. And even more dangerously, it is bringing the idea of the republic under a cloud. The Constitution of India defines India as a union of states. Friends, you know, recently state assembly elections were held in Karnataka where BJP was defeated. But it was not a simple electoral defeat. It was a rejection of Hindutva, idea of Modi, BJP and the RSS by the entire South India. And one may feel that, well, some check is being, somewhere they are being checked, somewhere they are being stalled. But the meaning of what has happened is not limited to that. The meaning of what has happened is that the Federal Republic of India has come close to a brink. And some more provocation, I hope not. Some more mischief, I hope not, could actually lead to dissolution of the state here. The Republic, I hope not. This regime has violated all that India stands for in its civilizational history, all that Hinduism stands for in the spirit of Bahutva, of assimilation, of tolerance, of acceptance. It has brought the Indian Republic close to a very dangerous point of clash and conflict. And it has ridiculed democracy in every possible way. But as if this was not enough of destruction, it has mindlessly plundered culture. Ashokji mentioned public art, Ashokji mentioned art institutions, academies, the condition of writers and artists, every kind of expression. This regime has made production of culture itself, production of expression of culture itself, a kind of a crime. So it is making the nation a nation without democracy, without the idea of republic, without culture, without its civilizational heritage. And worst of all, it is eliminating the possibility of asking question. All institutions that the Constitution had imagined, created, visualized for raising questions to regimes that go out of control, those institutions have been destroyed, vandalized, demolished. Mediocrity and ignorance have been imposed on them. And as if that was not enough, the universities have been silenced and potential questioners from young generations have been intimidated. Some of them have been put in jail, some were beaten up on the campuses of universities by police. And finally, in order not to allow any question to come up from the young generation, in the science syllabus, Darwin has been kicked out. The theory of evolution has been kicked out. As if to create space for bringing Manusmriti there and the old genealogies as valid science. Science raises new questions to reality and redefines reality. Question in India, in the parliament, outside the parliament. In any forum which the Constitution has created for asking questions, in any place of knowledge production, question is held guilty and punished, and the questioners are terrified, intimidated, and silenced. Us in India today are fighting a battle. I will not say it's a courageous battle. People in the past, the saints of Bhakti period have done that. The freedom fighters in India have done that in the past. I will not say we're doing anything extraordinary. We are only doing the minimum human duty to other human beings, minimum citizen duty to the republic, minimum creator's duty to language, speech, and expression. But we are fighting a small minority. We're fighting a battle, and we're surrounded by, in India and outside India, I'm speaking of Indians, people of Indian origin in diaspora. We are surrounded by a vast ocean of recklessly individualistic aspirants to material progress, who have made this new idea of Hindutva possible and given it a life and a form by creating a hegemony in such a way that when the master does not even command, this vast ocean of recklessly individualistic, materialistic people pounce on the critics. Friends, I will conclude by saying something alarming, but I must say so. On the eve of the inauguration of the new parliament building, I would like to point to one thing. Tomorrow, the parliament inauguration is formulated, is visualized like a coronation ceremony. A scepter has been found, dug out of dark chambers of history, and this Rajdanda is being brought there in the parliament. Parliament is a chamber which represents people's desires, views, and aspirations, Lok Sabha. But this scepter is being brought there, and some person who cannot think beyond himself all the time about I, me, myself, my photographs, will come there with a strange headgear looking like a crown and show in the optics through all the intimidated media channels, optics resembling a coronation ceremony. Corona is a Latin word which means a germ. It also means a crown. This new crown that the regime is wearing has put a germ in the minds of the people and given them untrue ideas of our civilization, our culture, our state. And that epidemic is widespread. India needs time. India needs courageous people to cure the country and the people of this new corona virus, the corona virus of thought. And you in this forum, I urge, I beseech, I request you, beyond the forum, please, more action is expected of you. Please do what you think needs to be done, what you think you can do. There is no replacement, substitute for action in the moments when action is necessary. Ashokji reminded all of us of all these things, and I consider myself tragically fortunate to be present this evening to listen to him, precisely on the day when we should have remembered the first liberal Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. But we have to look forward tomorrow morning to the new coronation ceremony as one more death knell in the heart of Indian democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Devi, and rest assured that I'm going to contact people and send this transcript to them as well as to Professor and you and Professor Vajpeyi, Dr. Vajpeyi, and there should be some way to put this before people, either in the form of booklets or in the videos, and as many can get, it will be a better thing to and talk about it and do some kind of action-oriented thing. So let's move to a question and answer session. But before that, as my duty tells me, I have to show you the poster for coming Saturday. It will be on Professor Anisur Rahman Saab's two books, Hazaro Khwaishein Aisi and Hazar Rang Shairi. As you know, Dr. Professor Anisur Rahman is not a new entity for us. He has been here very active on the diaspora, especially in the Adabi Sangam episodes. And coming week, he is going to talk on his two books, and he will be joined by Dr. Mozam Siddiqui and Dr. Rizwan Ahmed Saab. So now let's move on to question and answer session. And today I'm going to moderate it because our host, Dr. Rafat Hussain, is not present today. So please feel free to put your questions, and I'm unmuting everyone. You can share your video also. Raise your hand if you want, or write on something, and let me invite you all, okay? So you can unmute anybody who wants to. Okay, the first question goes to Dr. Syed Amir Saab. Amir bhai.
Thanks you very much. And I consider it as a blessed day by association with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, one of the giant figures on the world stage. I have to admit that what I was listening to the talk of Professor Ashok Vajpeyi, I felt sad. Sad because he represents precious few people still alive, Indian subcontinent, who embody values, noble values of culture, which we used to be proud of. He is emblematic of all which was good in Indian civilization. And so few are left with that. It's amazing that he has a command over Persian, Mirza Ghalib's poetry, Urdu, Farsi, Sanskrit. He is, to me, reminds of another giant on the Indian stage, no more, Professor Bhagwan Das, one of the rishis or people exponent of the Hindu philosophy, whose son Sri Prakash served as the first chief ambassador or high commissioner to Pakistan, and later on he served as the governor of Madras. He also represented, Professor Bhagwan Das, all the noble values of composite civilization of India. Having said all that, now I would like to ask Professor Vajpeyi, does he see any glimmer of hope in the recent developments in the election in Karnataka? Does it make the situation, in his estimate, less gloomy? And can we have something to celebrate? Thank you.
Well, thanks for those kind and generous words. I think what has happened in Karnataka has enthused many of those who want impatiently a change next year. So I see a possibility there. Also the possibility which has been eluding the political arena, that the opposition comes together. Now, in the context of the new parliament building inauguration, a large number of significant opposition has come together. So that's another hope, that the opposition on issues which face the nation can come together, can bury their differences, can be accommodated. On the other hand, because elections in India have become a game of money, muscle, and all those ugly elements, there's my friend Homi Bhabha uses a word which he has borrowed from somewhere, a disappointed hope. Now, so I sometimes suffer from a disappointed hope. That hope is possible, but there's a lot of disappointment because the urgency of coming together and the need for coming together and the cause for coming together do not seem to have dawned upon the opposition in ways that it should have. On the other hand, outside politics, luckily, in the arts and literature, in intellectual dialogues, these alternatives are being talked about. These alternatives are being looked at. So perhaps altogether, because politics cannot be allowed to determine everything. There's a lot of life, society, nation left outside of politics. And one of the uh, devices of a tyrannical mindset or a tyrannical regime is to convert everything into politics. Your costume, your uh, uh, sort of cuisine, your way of life, everything becomes politics. So we must resist that idea. And there's a lot which cannot be covered by politics. And there's a lot which should not be covered by politics. And I think in that arena, there's a lot of hope. So it's a very uh, complex answer. I'm sorry. But
Thank you.
Next questioner is Dr. Nazir Ahmed. Nazir Saab, please unmute yourself.
जी
जी,
आदाब। वाजपेयी जी ने हमारे सामने दो आईने रखे हैं। वाजपेयी जी has placed before us two paradigms with the sensitivity of a poet. Only a poet could do that. And the crispness and clarity of a social thinker. One paradigm is the way we ought to be, the way we were. And the other paradigm is the way we are. Now, the question is not the way we were and what we are today, but how did it happen? Why did it happen? What were the milestones which, in your opinion, if there are any, that define this transformation? It seems to have happened with a rapidity that is mind-boggling, because in understanding that transformation, hopefully we can find some antidote to the poison that is being spread in here. If you would please.
I quite see the point you're making, and I quite agree with it. गालिब का ही एक मिसरा है कि आईना खाने में मुद्दा महवे तमाशाए शिकस्ते दिल है, आईना खाने में कोई लिए जाता है मुझे। तो ये आईना खाने में हम हैं, और हमको ये सोचने की जरूरत है कि ऐसा हुआ क्यों। अगर हमारी सभ्यता में इतने सारे गुण थे, उसकी विरासत इतनी वसी और इतनी अकोमोडेटिव और समावेशी थी, तो ये सब हुआ क्यों? तो जाहिर है कि कहीं ना कहीं हमसे चूक हुई है। एक चूक तो मुझे लगता है तथाकथित धर्मनिरपेक्षता को लेकर। You see, the Constitution made the state secular, but the Constitution did not and couldn't have possibly make society secular. The society was multi-religious, and in our anxiety to secular, and this happened not merely in terms of the state, it also happens in literature and the arts, that in our anxiety to be secular, our impatience to be secular, to be seen as secular, we undermine the spiritual, the metaphysical. I can speak about the Hindi belt, and particularly the Hindi language. In literature, all spiritual, metaphysical matters became untouchable. But the society the Hindi society was dominated by religious aspirations, religious urges, what you have. And religions are social forces anyway. So even if you take the view that we have to, arts and literature have to reflect the social reality, then they were part of social reality. मंदिर मस्जिद तो भौतिक उपस्थितियां हैं, वो वहां है, उनको आप दरकिनार नहीं कर सकते, नजरअंदाज नहीं कर सकते, पर हमने वो नजरअंदाज किया और उसकी वजह से एक आध्यात्मिक शून्य पैदा हुआ जिसमें राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ घुस गया, खासकर हिंदी अंचल। आज ये बहुत बड़ी मेरी पीड़ा का एक बहुत बड़ा कारण ये भी है कि हिंदुत्व की शक्तियों को सबसे बड़ा समर्थन हिंदी अंचल से मिल रहा। ये सरकार हिंदी अंचल के वोटों पर मुनस्सर है। दक्षिण में तो ये खारिज हो चुकी है, तो इसका सारा दारोमदार इसी पर है। और दुर्भाग्य से हिंदी अंचल में ये जो स्थिति पैदा हुई, उसने एक आध्यात्मिक शून्य पैदा किया और उस आध्यात्मिक शून्य को राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ ने भर दिया या भरने का अवसर निकाल दिया। एक बात। दूसरी बात कि विचारधाराओं ने भी एक भूमिका निभाई है। उन्होंने भी कट्टरता को, असहिष्णुता को, और चाहे वो वाम विचारधारा हो, आज जब ये दूसरी विचारधारा असहिष्णु और दूसरों को खारिज करने पे तुली हुई है, तो हम ये ना भूलें कि वाम विचारधाराओं ने भी ये किया है। तो दूसरी तरफ विचारधाराओं ने भी एक भूमिका निभाई। तीसरी तरफ हमने जो रास्ता दुर्भाग्य से चुना विकास का, इस समय तो सड़कें बहुत चौड़ी की जा रही, लेकिन हम भूल जाते हैं कि लोगों के बीच दरारें भी बहुत चौड़ी की जा रही। ये जो हर चीज को भव्य बनाना, मतलब बनारस में एक भव्य कॉरिडोर बन गया है और अयोध्या में एक भव्य मंदिर बनने जा रहा है। इस भव्यता के पीछे भयानक क्रूरता छुपी हुई। उस क्रूरता को हमने पोसा। आखिर ये हमारे चुने आए हैं ना, ये हम कैसे भूल सकते हैं। ठीक है कि उनका प्रतिशत 38 ही है, और 38 का मतलब ये हुआ कि 62% लोग तो उनके जद से बाहर हैं। लेकिन इसी हिंदी अंचल के समर्थन से उनको सत्ता मिली हुई, और फिर वो कोशिश कर रहे हैं इसी अंचल के समर्थन से उनको सत्ता मिल जाए। तो मुझे एक हिंदी लेखक के रूप में ये बात कहने की लगती है कि इस समय ये संकट सिर्फ सभ्यता, लोकतंत्र और राजनीति का संकट नहीं है। ये संकट मेरी भाषा का भी संकट है कि क्या हम अपनी सभ्यता के मूल्यों पर वापस जा सकते हैं? क्या हम लोकतांत्रिक व्यवस्था पर वापस जा सकते हैं, या कि हम आंख मूंद कर भक्तों की तरह फिर एक क्रूर, हिंसक, आक्रामक और हिंदू विरोधी, हिंदू धर्म विरोधी, जैसा कि गणेश देवी ने कहा, सत्ता को फिर सौंपेंगे? जी।
Next questioner is Rudrangshu Singh. Rudrangshu.
Thank you, sir. And it is pleasure to listen to Dr. Vajpeyi. And
Yes.
I thank God and I thank Razi Saab that this is the first time I have a chance to interact with you, sir. I have been closely following you on TV debates when you were on TV debates 10 years ago. And I'm a big fan of yours. My question to you, sir, since you have been a bureaucrat yourself, that why all the institutions have tumbled so thick and fast before a fascist regime? Why are we so spineless as a society? And my second question to you would be, what was your opinion about that Anna Hazare movement? What role has it played to bring in fascism that we are currently facing?
Well, in the first place, I must tell you that as an ex-civil servant, I feel really ashamed at what has happened to the civil services in our time. In civil service, there were always people who were supine, spineless, uh, political opportunists, etc. But there was a hard core and a big core which was courageous, which was committed to certain values of probity, integrity, fair play, etc. Now it seems that, and honesty. Uh, in our times, the normal belief was that about 30% of civil servants are corrupt or dubious, but about 70%. Now it seems it's the other way around. No, this is a shameful thing. The civil servants have the best securities available to any other category of people in India, that they should succumb to this kind of temptation, political servility is very, very
What is the reason behind?
depressing. Very, very depressing. Now, the reason I'm afraid uh, I cannot possibly formulate the reason, but the reason could be that just as the social fabric uh, ultimately got manipulated by these forces. So civil services, being part of the social fabric, have also been similarly uh, compromised. Uh, that is not a good enough explanation, I know. I have no other explanation to offer. Uh, your second question, what is the second question? I should have somehow.
The second question was, sir, what was the role of Anna Hazare and the circus
Yeah.
in
Well,
2011?
frankly, at that time when Anna Hazare was doing his demonstration and all that, I felt very enthused by it, and I thought, here is something happening which might bring the issue of corruption center stage. And it seemed to have done that. But unfortunately, it also seemed to have made ground. And there were people at that time who were saying that Anna Hazare, and I mean, and his entourage, in a manner of speaking, was hand in glove with RSS and BJP and that kind. We tended to disregard it. But I think ultimately, Anna Hazare played a role which turned out to be rather dubious. Corruption on a very large scale exists even today. Politics has become a genre of corruption with no exceptions, and BJP is no exception. BJP rules states have shown no better performance in terms of corruption than other parties ruled states. The politics and bureaucracy and media, and unfortunately religious organizations are all comrades in corruption. And this is completely unnerving, apart from being completely unacceptable.
Okay, so please ask questions or make comments, or if you want anybody. Otherwise, okay, I see Syed Haider Saab. Syed Haider Saab, please ask questions. Unmute yourself. Syed Haider Saab, yes.
Yeah. Now, can you listen now?
Yeah, a short one question, please. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vajpeyi. It was really brilliant, and I enjoyed. Just I was listening that 38% people, 38% people are dictating on 62%. So don't you think that this democracy system be made more representative, fine tuning, and intellectuals like you who has a good following should make a movement that people have access to democracy?
Well, you are right. You see, democracy has been converted by this regime, particularly into majoritarianism, and thereby several things have happened. So obviously, our democratic processes are such that they can promote and bring into power forces which are ab initio anti-democratic. Now, how to prevent that from happening?
Yes.
How to make a constitutional arrangement which can ensure that this does not happen. So there are two parts to it. One is that broadly the people of India should feel that there has to be a change in the democratic processes, taking into account the distortions that can be brought in there. And secondly, there has to be, after all, there are limits to what a constitution or a legally inscribed process would achieve. There has to be the watchdog of the people. Watchdog, media has become a dog which only पूंछ हिलाता रहता है सत्ता के सामने. So it is no longer a watchdog, except a part of it. But other institutions and have to become. Thereby, perhaps some kind of a pressure could be brought about. But it's a long drawn process. It is not easy to think of ways how to ensure within the legal framework something that can prevent a majority becoming so powerful that it can completely obliterate from public imagination, from political imaginary, from electoral processes, crores of people like this government has done. After all, it has ruled without the support of Muslims. 20 crore Muslims of India have been bypassed and made invisible in terms of regime and governance. So this is a serious matter which cannot be wished away, which cannot be overlooked. but which has to be debated. And some of us have been raising these questions in our conversations and dialogue seminars.
Okay, next question comes from Tariq Farooqi Saab.
Yeah, thank you very much, Razi, and thank you very much for the people who participated in this discussion. It was very enlightening and very, very good, but sort of depressing and sort of gloomy. So let me ask this question. I mean, we've seen the people from the South have shown us the way, but when will people in the North wake up? I'll give you, you mentioned that the parliament will be inaugurated tomorrow at the anniversary of Veer Savarkar. And I was also reading somewhere recently that under Nehru's time, the parliament used to meet at least 135 days, and now it's down to 60. And even in those 60 days, most of the time it's adjourned quickly. And the question hour has kind of disappeared, and Modi never participates in that in any case. And yet we see that he is there whenever a train is inaugurated, no matter where. Perhaps even for shauchalayas, I do not know. But then those were the cheetahs who were introduced in that in some parts of India. And when they're dying, I mean, he's not there. But when will the people from the North, there's so many other examples, wake up to see that, you know, that it is causing India tremendous harm. And when we can look around our own neighborhood, see what other countries that have gone that path have suffered. Are we going down the same path? Or are we going to be totally blind? Or are we going to see some course correction? Over to you.
Well, people of North have to realize 3 or 4 things. One, that what is at stake is not merely politics, democracy, constitution, but more importantly, Indian civilization. One. Two, that they have a decisive role to play. Three, that if the more religiously integrated South has rejected the Hindutva bandwagon, then why the North Indians are being deluded into supporting it? 4, the political parties operating in North India have to take into account that they are historically placed at a very critical moment. If they decide not to play a proper democratic, human and humanizing role, then India is doomed. Now, I don't know whether the North Indians realize this, but perhaps the minorities, the Dalits, the women, the Adivasis would realize this in North India. The Savarna Hindus may not realize it because they suffer. They are the custodians of Hindutva in North India, most of them. So we should forget about it. But they are a small percentage. If these forces could be, and there are inroads being made into them, and there are factors like Mayawati, who, because of her own perhaps pressures, is not able to come out and is betraying both the larger cause of democracy and also the more urgent cause of opposition unity. But if the opposition succeeds in coming to one candidate every seat, then something can happen. Efforts are being made, whether they succeed or they don't. If every BJP candidate is opposed by one single opposition candidate, things can change.
Now I will invite randomly, but foremost Professor Ravi Sinha. You want to say something?
Thank you, Raji Sahab, and thank you, Vajpeyi Sahab and Ganesh Devi Sahab. It was a powerful description of the misfortune and the tragedy that has befallen India. My curiosities will be more beyond the descriptions, whatever questions many have raised about, is there a glimmer of hope or why this has befallen us? So two things. One is that एक सवाल का जवाब देते हुए आपने खुद कहा, वाजपेयी साहब से मैं मुखातिब हूँ, आपने खुद कहा कि एक गलती सेकुलर स्टेट या सेकुलरिज्म का जो पॉलिटिकल कॉन्सेप्ट है, उसने इंडिया के सॉयल में जो रिलीजियोसिटी है या जो स्पिरिचुअलिटी है उसको नहीं पहचाना। और दूसरा कारण उसी में आपने ये भी गिनाया कि आइडियोलॉजीज ने भी जो रोल प्ले किया, उनके इंटॉलरेंस ने या सेक्टेरियनिज्म ने भी जो रोल प्ले किया, उस पर भी आपने उंगली उठाई। तो पहली क्यूरियोसिटी तो ये है कि अगर हमारी सभ्यता इतनी पुरानी है और इसमें आध्यात्मिकता इतनी रची बसी है हमारी जमीन में, तो किसी के बिगाड़ने से बिगड़ क्यों जाती है? सेकुलर स्टेट तो बहुत नई चीज है ना, पिछले 75 साल की चीज है 3000 साल की सभ्यता में। या आइडियोलॉजीज का प्रभाव आप देख ही रहे हैं, लेफ्ट का जिनकी आलोचना आपने की, लेफ्ट का प्रभाव तो खत्म होता दिख रहा है, लेफ्ट डिक्लाइन पे दिख रहा है। तो इतनी छोटी फोर्सेस, इतनी इनफेक्टिव दिखने वाली आइडियोलॉजीज या इतना नया सेकुलर स्टेट हमारे सिविलाइजेशन की आध्यात्मिकता को, स्पिरिचुअलिटी को मडिड क्यों कर देता है, क्यों खराब कर देता है? पहली क्यूरियोसिटी तो मेरी ये है। और दूसरी क्यूरियोसिटी उससे रिलेटेड है शायद, कि डेमोक्रेसी इंडिया में इन्वर्टेड डेमोक्रेसी के तौर पे दिखाई दे रही है, इस सेंस में कि डेमोक्रेसी वैल्यू और लेजिटिमेसी, दो एस्पेक्ट हैं डेमोक्रेसी के। डेमोक्रेटिक वैल्यूज enshrined in the constitution or instituted in the institutions, that comes from above and that comes from history. And legitimacy, that comes from people through elections, through seeking their consent. Now democracy is undoing itself through the popular aspect of democracy is damaging the democratic values and institutions. Now, I mean, poet, you included, and literature, artists, they are admired often for speaking truth to the power. But should we also not look in literature and art that you should speak truth to the people too? And you should show the mirror to the people too. People are implicated in what tragedy has befallen India. It is not that bad people have brought this tragedy to India. We are all implicated in it, And what examples do you have in Indian literature, including Hindi literature, where literature is showing, not being populist, is critiquing the people, is critiquing the culture, and is showing a mirror to the people? So these are the two curiosities. Why do our civilization get so easily spoiled, and why doesn't art speak truth to the people?
Good.
Yeah. Well, सवाल आपने थोड़ा परेशान करने वाला उठाया है। अगर हमारी 3000 वर्षों की सभ्यता में आध्यात्मिकता इतना केंद्रीय थी, तो इस थोड़े से वक्फे में क्यों भरभरा गई? तो इसका एक व्यापक कारण तो ये हो सकता है कि हमने पढ़े लिखे लोगों ने, खासकर पढ़े लिखे वर्ग ने विशेषतः इस आध्यात्मिकता को पहचाना नहीं, और चूंकि पहचाना नहीं, इसलिए वो व्यापक लोक जीवन में भी व्याप्त नहीं हो पाई। लोक जीवन की अपनी जो आध्यात्मिकता थी वो चलती रही, जो काफी सतही सी होती है लेकिन बहरहाल होती है। तो उसको मैनिपुलेट करना ज्यादा आसान रहा। और दूसरा ये कि स्पीच, साहित्य और कलाएं तो कुल मिलाकर धर्मनिरपेक्ष होते हुए भी आध्यात्मिकता से दूर नहीं रही। उनमें आध्यात्मिकता की प्रधानता रही है ऐसा कहना तो कठिन होगा, लेकिन जैसे जैसे सच्चाई के बहुत सारे आयाम प्रकट होते रहे और सच्चाई की पहचान बढ़ती गई, वैसे वैसे उसमें एक आध्यात्मिक तत्व भी रहा है। ये हिंदी, उर्दू, मलयालम, कन्नड़, बंगला कविता वगैरह सब में देखा जा सकता है। दूसरी बात जो आपने कही कि साहित्य और कलाओं का काम अगर सत्ता से सच बोलना है तो लोगों से भी सच बोलना होना चाहिए, तो ये बिल्कुल ठीक बात है। लेकिन मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि साहित्य और कलाएं ऐसा सच बोलती रही हैं लोगों से। एक समस्या ये भी रही है हमारी शिक्षा व्यवस्था की कि उसने पढ़े लिखे लोग तो तैयार किए हैं, लेकिन सांस्कृतिक रूप से निरक्षर लोग भी तैयार। उनमें से ये सांस्कृतिक निरक्षर जो लोग हैं वो अधिकांशतः राजनीति में, अधिकांशतः अपराध में, कुछ मीडिया में भी, जिनको अपनी सांस्कृतिक धरोहर से, उसकी विरासत से कुछ लेना देना नहीं, उसके बारे में वो जानते भी नहीं। एक तरह की तुरंता हर चीज उनके यहाँ है। तो ऐसा नहीं है कि उन्होंने ऐसा नहीं किया है। हिंदी में अज्ञे, मुक्तिबोध, नागार्जुन, बाद में धूमिल, श्रीकांत वर्मा, रवि सहाय, और मेरा ख्याल है कि उर्दू में बहुत सारे, फैज को तो हम हिंदुस्तानी शायद ही मानते रहे हैं, उनकी इतनी मौजूदगी हिंदुस्तान में रही है, तो फैज और फिराक और इस तरह के शायरों ने भी, उसके बाद कभी शहरयार, अख्तरुल ईमान वगैरह ने भी किया है, बांग्ला में किया है, मलयालम में किया है। हिंदी बेल्ट की एक बड़ी भारी समस्या ये बांग्ला, मराठी, मलयालम, कन्नड़ आदि अंचलों के मुकाबले इस अंचल में साहित्य का कम असर। लेखक हिंदी में होना इसलिए कठिन काम। बड़े से बड़े लेखक हिंदी में हुए हैं, लेकिन समाज में उनकी कोई हैसियत नहीं बनी, जबकि उनसे कमतर लेखक बांग्ला में या मलयालम में या के कन्नड़ में बने और उनकी बड़ी सामाजिक हैसियत। तो ये हिंदी समाज की बहुत बड़ी समस्या है। इसलिए इस समय हिंदी समाज ही सबसे बड़ा, और हिंदी का पढ़ा लिखा समाज ही इस देश का सबसे बड़ा दुश्मन है। अगर आप मुझसे कहलाना चाहें तो मैं ये कह सकता हूँ। ये पढ़ा लिखा मध्य वर्ग अपनी भाषा से, अपने साहित्य से, अपनी परंपरा से, अपनी सभ्यता से विश्वासघात करने वाला वर्ग, और यही हिंदी अंचल का नियामक, राजनैतिक रूप से नियामक वर्ग। अब ये है क्यों हुआ, इसके कारणों की बहुत लंबी बात होगी। अब समय बहुत हो गया है, शायद लोग दो घंटे ये बकबक करते रहे।
No, just one more question, I guess. Dr. Imtiaz, a very senior person in our community from Chicago, probably he's asking a question. Dr. Imtiaz?
Yes,
Please.
thank you. My question is, what does the common man in India think about the BJP not inviting the president to inaugurate the new building of the parliament? Does this put the BJP or the Modi in a bad light among the common people?
Well, I do not know what the common man thinks, but surely there will be a big media blitz tomorrow, and all channels and all the newspapers will be full of what Modi says and this, that, and the other. And the fact that a tribal woman president has not been invited to inaugurate the new parliament building would be wiped out in popular memory. But I think it, a common man, and the most sensitive of it, perhaps, part of it, would see the point that this has happened and that it should not have happened. Now, whether uh, that realization will be widespread or not, I'm in no position to say. I'm not an expert on popular opinion. So I can only say that I hope people realize this. But
So lastly, Vajpeyi sir, as Professor Devi also hinted, can you give a sort of some kind of focused suggestion? People like us sitting in the diaspora here, doing such kind of sessions, what and how and what should we do to make it a little more effective here as well as back home? What should be our role rather than
well, my own impression, and maybe it's not very well-based impression, is that one of the popular supports that Modi and his regime enjoys comes from Indian diaspora,
Yes.
who have a notion of India which I dare say had nothing much to do with its civilizational enterprise, with its plurality, its heritage. So they are very easily taken in by a Hindu Rashtra and the pride of the Hindu and things of that kind. And a lot of organizations which have created havoc in India, like Vishwa Hindu Parishad, etc., who have promoted communal violence in India, have been funded substantially by Indian diaspora. So Indian diaspora, in my mind, has a rather negative image. I must admit that.
Yes. Yes.
However, I'm sure that a large part of it being of people who are intelligent, who are well read, cannot possibly be a victim of these falsehoods and these hypocrisies. And I'm very glad and grateful to you for giving me an opportunity to speak to some of them, to bring a sense of reality to what is happening in India. Uh, uh, one of the problems that India faces today is that in spite of these Hindutva propelled atrocities and violence and what you have, there is also some progress. I mean, there are better roads and infrastructure has improved, and many people have got houses which they never had before, etc. So some of these welfare schemes seem to create a justification for the violence of Hindutva. So we are already in a situation where uh, this is happening. Uh, the diaspora should really be a force which not only takes genuine pride in the Indian civilizational enterprise and its pluralities and its accommodation, its openness, its tradition of debate and dissent and discussion and dialogue, it should also impress upon whoever that India is not just this, that India is much more. And somehow that India still survives. That India cannot be killed by goons and thugs and forces uh, which are very well armed and even have international support, perhaps. All this, and therefore, I think they should become comrades to those who are struggling to keep this plural India alive, dynamic, and in power again.
So we are trying. Yeah, there is a recent, some encouraging developments like, umbrella organizations like 10, 15 coming together and trying to oppose the Hindutva onslaught here, especially like organizations like Hindus for Human Rights or American Indian Muslim Council. They are partners, and American Muslim Institute, all those progressive students movement. So there are 15 or 16 Dalit movement included, and who are really doing a lot of good thing, and they have become force. In fact, Overseas Congress is doing Rahul Gandhi is coming here in DC area, and we will have an opportunity to see him on June 1st. And so there will be, there are some movement, but
I'm sure I'm not aware, but
so it is quite now 2 hours past. Thank you very much. It was very, very powerful presentation. We learned a lot, and we got very much inspired by, rekindled our spirit a little more. Yeah, and Professor Devi.
My small comment would be that in spite of being a strong civilization, sir, we prefer convenience over morality.
All right. Yeah, so let's now, I think, end this session here at this moment. And thank you, Danish Iqbal Saab. As always, you are our part of us. And Professor Devi very powerfully expressed what should be done. And
thank you for asking me to join, and good night.
I will send you the transcript and the video, and please go through it. And between you and Vajpeyi Saab, if we can make a more summarized version in the print type, and advise us how to do it in different languages and how to do further. So that will be nice to promote these things. Right.
Thank you, and good night. And
all right, thank you a lot, and we are very, gratified. All right, take care. Next is Professor Anisur Rahman Saab, so don't forget it. All right. Thank you. Khuda Hafiz. Namaste. Adab.
Good night, everyone.